I've made so many mistakes in my Madden franchises, and I'm sure you have as well. In today's video, I'm going over the top 5 mistakes I see in Madden franchises and how you can avoid them. The first mistake I see in Madden franchises is failing to focus on deving up your young players. It happens way too often that I go into a Madden franchise game and I'm only going up against 1 or 2 superstar players. It's kind of confusing. For me, I try to get at least 4 or 5 on each side of the ball. If you don't have those players, the impact guys that have the abilities that make your team overpowered, you're basically playing the game with one hand tied behind your back. And sure, you could sign these superstars in free agency or trade for them, but then you're paying a lot of money for them or a lot of assets for them, when instead you can focus on deving up the guys that you have on your roster that you've built up, that you care about, and have control of for several years and don't have to pay them all that much money. For a player to dev up, they either need to get an in-season scenario, which is based on how well they're playing and how well they did in their previous few games, or at the end of the season, they need to be top 5 in a positional specific category stat group. So for quarterbacks, those who are top 5 in passing yards and passing touchdowns typically go up a dev trait or go up to X Factor. And that's the same with running backs for rushing yards, interceptions for cornerbacks, receiving touchdowns for wide receivers and tight ends. So get your young players on the field, get them the ball, and upgrade those dev traits. Another really common mistake I see our young GMs making is choosing the wrong upgrades for the guys on their rosters. I've actually made 2 videos breaking down offense and defensive upgrades and which archetype you need to choose to make your players the best possible. Don't go in and auto upgrade. Don't just choose whatever they're good at. Choose what's going to make them the best player. The number 3 mistake I see in Madden franchise is valuing the wrong positions. You have 11 starters on offense, 11 starters on defense, and your kicker and punter. And not all those positions matter equally. I would much rather have an X Factor, gunslinger, escape artist quarterback than a star offensive guard. And when we're talking about overpaying or overvaluing a position, it's important to realize that that means a lot of different things. For free agents, it means not giving them the biggest contracts. For trades, it means not trading for guys at low value positions by giving up high value positions. And then 3, in the draft, it means not taking offensive guards in the first 10, 15 spots and instead taking high impact positions like corner, quarterback, wide receiver. I'll always find the money to pay a 95 speed superstar cornerback or a receiver, and I'll make it work with an interior offensive lineman or a backup tight end. Related to the previous mistake, the number 4 mistake I see franchise players making is overpaying free agents. When you overpay free agents or you overvalue guys that aren't going to be high impact for your team, you lose out on the valuable cap space that's going to be so necessary to sign the big high impact guys like a Justin Herbert, DK Metcalf, stuff like that. And this is especially value in those online CFMs where we see those $200, $300 million contracts handed out because people can afford it because they're finding value at other positions. So how can you avoid overpaying? Number 1, do not re-sign a player on the player's ready to negotiate screen unless it is absolutely essential that they do not reach free agency. Number 2, in free agency, if you don't have any competition, this is especially valuable in offline CPU drafts, but can also impact an online draft. Make sure you're making an exact 71-point offer, which is like the minimum for getting a green interest offer. And most players are just going to accept that straight up. That's going to save you money and make sure that you're not spending all of that cap space on a guy who actually might not be all that high impact. Or if you're getting a high impact guy at 71 points, it's going to save you money to go get more high impact guys. And we've been building up to this the whole video, but the last mistake I see, and the worst one and the most limiting one, is poor cap management. Now, there's a huge difference between your cap space and your cap penalty. Your cap space is the amount of money you have remaining under the salary cap to actually sign players. Your cap penalty is dead money that you cannot use after you trade or cut a previously signed player. So if you give out one of those massive contracts and you wind up having to trade or cut that player, you're going to be eating a massive cap penalty that's going to prevent you from going after guys that you really want for the next couple of years. To have better cap space and cap penalty management, here are 3 tips. Number 1 is only sign contracts that are beneficial to you. That means in free agency, you don't go into bidding wars. You don't overpay for guys that aren't high impact, and that you actually are valuing the guys that are high impact, and you're willing to take on a little bit of extra salary to get that extra benefit of having the player on your team. The way I kind of think about it is value and age over cost. That's kind of a way to think about who is the best option for you. Are you getting someone who's really high impact at a high cost, or someone who's medium impact at low cost? That's going to help you determine which guys you're actually signing in free agency and how to build your team. Number 2 is proactively moving on from players when the time is right, especially if they're an inherited contract. You want to make sure that you're not logging yourself into 3 to 4 years of a $10 million salary if the player isn't going to be valuable for you. At that point, you take a cap hit in the first year and just say, hey, listen, this was a mistake. I'm going to eat a cap hit for the first year, but I'm going to free up 10, 12 mil a year down the line and make sure that my team is going to be in the best position moving forward. I'll be able to sign a really high impact free agent or trade for a player with my new cap space in year 2 or year 3 after that first cut happens. And number 3 is understanding the penalty of cutting or trading a player, 1, before you sign them, and then 2, right before you move them. You don't want to be in a situation where you're taking on a $20, $30 million cap hit for trading a player and not understanding that moving forward, so that when you go into free agency, you think you'll have all this money. You really don't. Be conscious of that, be careful, and use Madden School. They have a lot of really good tools to help Madden franchise players, including calculating cap hits for each year. So you just have to put in the player's contract information, and you can understand how much money it's actually going to cost you. I'll link this down in the description. Well, I'll see you guys in the next one.